I wrote the book and told my story where I became naked, took my mask off, to give permission to other people to tell their story. We all have a story. We're going to continue wearing our masks until we know who we are. When we have taken the wrong turn on the road, we're going to be redirected until we find our purpose in life. And so it's for us to really be aware of the messages that come to us, tuning in into our pineal gland. We're tuning into the higher consciousness and how we're dearly guided. We're so guided. And once we have tapped into the higher self, we just know things. We're all intuitive. And at the soul level, that person who's pushing our buttons is actually helping us to identify this is something we need to release. And so those that hurt us the most actually are indeed our best teachers. No one can make us feel judged. No one can make us feel beautiful unless we feel those things about ourselves. We're all part of the spokes. We're all a spoke of the wheel. And collectively, we carry the load. A doctor needs his patients. A lawyer needs a criminal. We're all divine beings having this human experience. Understanding is the answer. Understanding is a key that will set humanity free. And when we embrace this truth, this universal truth, our life will become a wonderful adventure. My life has become a wonderful adventure, even at my age. I'm still reading, because knowledge is power, awareness is growth, and truth liberates us. And so all I can say that at this ripe old age, I am free.
Beautiful. All you need, you. Show up, living. Pay attention, your. Participate. Favorite. La 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 life. La 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 life. Good day, namaste. Welcome to Your Favorite Life. I'm Jeffosaurus Rex, and my goal is to bring you conversations of growth, creativity, and adventure. This episode is sponsored by a good friend of mine, Derek Cluxton, a real estate agent in the Simcoe County region. Derek's been very supportive of this show, and you can actually catch an interview with Derek on episode 9. So thank you, Derek. I'm so excited to bring forward this episode. I got the chance to sit down with Rita Be-Still. What a beautiful and fun last name, Be-Still. It's the same name of her bookstore in Elmville, Ontario. She's an author of a couple books. She wrote this one called The Gifts of Responsibility. I'm so blessed to have read this and this to have came into my life. It taught me a lot about life's lessons, going full circle, breaking cycles, how to deal with grief in life, past lives. So thank you, Rita, for your inspiration and guidance and having this book come into my life. Rita is a wonderful human. When I asked her where she's at in life, she said she's blessed to be fulfilling her life's purpose. And although her journey of understanding has been an arduous one, it is one she's grateful to have experienced. So turn your ears on and open your hearts and enjoy this episode with a wonderful guide, Rita Be-Still. I am honored to have Rita Be-Still on the Your Favorite Life podcast. And actually, funny story, we met at the storytelling show. I'm not sure how you discovered that show.
I'm not sure. It was so long ago, I have forgotten.
Yeah, I think I got an email from you. Rita Be-Still wants to be on the storytelling show, and lovely to have met you and have you tell your stories on the show. And then a couple years later, I knew about your lovely bookstore here, and I went to go to a bookstore in Barrie, which was closed on a day that it said they were open, and it happened twice. And I said, oh, yeah, I want to check out this bookstore in Barrie. And then I said, oh, you know what? My friend Rita has a bookstore in Elmville. I've never been there. And so it's almost like something was pointing me. this direction. And yeah, and I'm so glad what's unfolded from that with the light bearers and just sitting down and having tea with you a couple times and grabbing some great books on lots of different spiritual topics. I wanted to ask you, where did Be-Still come from? What a beautiful last name.
It's very interesting that you should ask me that, and thank you. And so I'm divorced, and so B was part of my maiden name. And so I just dropped a few lines, a few letters, and still would have been my married name. And so knowing that my former husband was part of my journey, I wanted to include him in this name. So that's Be-Still. So I used both my maiden name, part of my maiden name, as well as part of my married name.
Yeah, I actually talk about that sometimes, about when we say our ex, and I like to think, well, I think a better word would be former, and
Absolutely.
Because ex almost has this negative connotation,
Yes.
and say maybe there were some negative things, but I'm sure you shared a lot of growth.
Oh, absolutely.
Intimacy, yeah.
Like I said, I've come to really appreciate that there are no accidents in life, and we sign a soul contract before coming on the earth. And so those that hurt us the most actually are indeed our best teachers.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for my former husband being the Judas in my life, because I've been able to fulfill my life's purpose.
Yeah, do you want to talk about life's purpose? And
as light bearers, as we know, we've all signed up for this, to be a mouthpiece for the hierarchy or whatever master we are most attracted to. Having grown up as a Christian, a Catholic, so Jesus was always my master, shall we say, and so. And then, of course, when I began to run into a lot of challenges in my life, what I had been taught by this universal church was not enough. And so, of course, I went back to university and got my degree in psychology and mental health, but that was not enough either. And so I began really seeking higher universal knowledge, which led me to the Foundation for Higher Spiritual Learning in 1998. And all I can say, that was life transforming. And so it's been a journey. And I'm really, really happy that all those challenges in my life have brought me to this place today.
Yeah, do you want to speak about what was that a course, the Ascended Master Spiritual Learning, that's what you're referring to?
Yes. After I graduated, I thought, okay, what I know here, it's not going to give me the tools I really need to help another human being. And so I began taking more courses. And so this one time I was taking a course down the city of Toronto, and it was a meditation course. It was being run by a psychologist of all people. And so I signed up for the course, and I went on a few lessons, a few practices, and she had us sort of, I don't know, just crawling on the floor, trying to identify our animal. The inner animal. I thought, this is kind of silly here, you know. What is this all about? And so I eventually canceled my course. But what was very interesting, we talked about before, there are no accidents, there's no, everything happens for a reason in life. And outside of her door, her office, there was a little basket or a little tray with these, I would not flyers, but booklets. And so I picked up a booklet. And so I'm going through the booklet, and lo and behold, I see this ad, the Brotherhood of Humanity. So, oh my goodness sakes, the Brotherhood of Humanity, what is this about? So I called the woman, and she had a place in Scarborough. So I went to see Ethel, and this is how I was introduced. There was a chapter here in Scarborough. The head office was in Virginia, USA. So I was a student for 5 years. I would go to their conferences in Toronto and Florida. It was just really, really life transforming, and that was the beginning of my awakening, that there's so much more to what we have been taught.
Yeah, being a question asker or knowledge seeker, does that relate to this at all?
That does relate because it doesn't matter what credentials we have. And I always say here in my groups that credentials on the wall do not necessarily make us wise, but life's adversity can make us whole if we want to become whole. And so life is a journey of many steps, of many, and so ultimately all of us, for us to become really truly grounded, both psychologically, both spiritually and physically and emotionally, we need to develop all the attributes. We need to develop all the elements. So the four elements, earth, water, air, and fire, really, really essential for us human beings to develop these elements, because this is when we do become very grounded. Nothing really shakes us. We know where we're going. Unfortunately, these are tools that have not been given to us. They're not taught in the school system. They're not taught anywhere, unfortunately. So it is a personal choice that we make to begin the journey of self-discovery, the journey of becoming a seeker of knowledge, seeker of universal knowledge, I should say. Yeah. So I've been on this journey for a long time.
Yeah. Do you want to speak about how to cultivate earth energy and the other elements more individually?
We can certainly do that, definitely.
Maybe
if
it's
you'd like
asking
to,
us to pick it up. It's
yeah. If you want to just maybe flip that over and
Sure.
now this theory here goes back to Hippocrates. Hippocrates, as most of us know, is a Greek metaphysician and psychiatrist. And so I really became enamored with his philosophy of life. And so this is where this is all coming from. So it has a real history. And what I've done in the last 25 years, I've changed the names of I would call them that these are all wearing masks. And because until we take our mask off, until we become harmonized on both left side of the brain and right side of the brain, we're going to continue wearing our mask. And so the logical adult, we have a right side and a left side. So if we look at the chart there, the logical adult and the wise parent, they are from the left side of the brain, which is the masculine side of the brain, which is very much needed. We need to be adults.
Right.
The creative child and the sensitive child are the very feminine, or shall we say, or the right side of the brain, which is very much connected to our heart. So we have not been told this historically, that both men and women have both the masculine and the feminine. So the right brain is about our feminine, the left brain is about our masculine. So these two polarities, it's very, very essential that they become harmonized. And every stage of development is about 7 years. So when we look at the chart, 7 times 4, it's about 28, right? And so our brain continues to grow until we're in our late 20s. So hopefully, if life has gone according to plan, we would be hopefully balanced. But this doesn't happen, as we know. Life is not perfect. So for most of us, it takes a few more years.
Yeah, and you said in your book, it can take a lifetime to cultivate all 4 of them.
Yes.
And
yes. And this is where working on ourselves first, because most of humanity has a wounded child. All of us have been traumatized to some degree, if not in this lifetime, in a previous lifetime. So we bring back this karma, shall we say, to transmute. And because of the karma, we begin our journey oftentimes. And so if we don't begin our journey of self-discovery and to heal and release the past, we will never become balanced and harmonized. It's just that simple. And today, here in North America in particular, all over the world, mental illness is the #1 disease. All because it really refers to the wounded child. And so unless that wounded child is healed, we will never really become harmonized and balanced. That is essential for us to recognize.
Perfect segue to a book I'm reading called The Presence Process. Have you heard of that book?
No, I haven't, but it sounds like an interesting title.
Yeah, it's all about coming into the present moment, and you'll love this because in your book you speak about life being a stage, right? And I love to hear you expand on this. Mm-hmm. So in his book, he says, when things upset us, if we change those words around, we can hear the words sets us up or set us up, right?
Yes.
And it's not about shooting the messenger.
No.
It's about, and it's not even about necessarily feeling better, but getting better at feeling. Mm-hmm. And so you talk about life being a stage. So when something upsets us, it's just showing us, it's mirroring that there's something within us that is reminding us of something from the past or something
Absolutely.
That's unhealed. Do you want to speak about life being a stage? And
yes, very interesting because most of us have heard of William Shakespeare, okay? High school, all of us. But when I was writing this book, I was brought back to revisit Shakespeare, some of his very famous quotes. And one of the quotes that really stuck with me, has stuck with me all these years, is the world is a stage. Men and women merely players. We have our entrances and our exits, and each actor plays many parts. I thought, wow, what is this all about? And so this is where my journey really began, that this is not our first lifetime here. We have been here many, many times until we wake up and remember. And so that's when the shift really began for me. So William Shakespeare, as some of us know, may not know, he was born in 1561, and he was the illegitimate son of Queen Elizabeth I. But all this knowledge has been hidden from humanity. His real name was Sir Francis Bacon. And so William Shakespeare was one of the servants' name, because back in those days, this is like over 600 years ago, he would have been considered a bastard, no father, and Queen Elizabeth would have been dethroned. So that was never to be. And so that has really, really, really has such an impact on my life. And a number of years ago, I was privileged to go to Hyde Park and to watch one of his plays. Well, lo and behold, all the actors came on stage with masks. And so when we look at the chart, each and every one of us, doesn't matter whether you're left brain, doesn't matter if you're sensitive or logical, we are going to continue wearing our masks until we know who we are. And then it's only at that point that we can just take the mask off, realizing that each and every one of us has a story. No one is better than anyone else. And so those that cause us the most pain in life are indeed our best teachers. And so this is where we can let go of the blame game.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are some ways we can self-discover better and take off our masks, or if you want to share about becoming naked. You said that you say in your book, becoming naked is a beautiful endeavor if it allows us to heal and
Yes.
it resonates with others.
Yeah, you have a good memory, Jeff.
I highlighted some stuff in your book, and
yes, when I wrote my book, I had just opened my office. I used to work in the social service field for a number of years, and then spirituality is something that is not addressed in a mainstream, helping centers. And so I could no longer be there. So I decided to just quit that and open up my own office. And that's when I read the book. And the reason I was reading, of course, we're always guided, as we know or may not know. I wrote the book and told my story where I became naked, took my mask off, to give permission to other people to tell their story. We all have a story. And until we too tell our story of all the poor choices we have made in life, because we're children, the overall scheme of things, I say that we're children.
we're just big kids. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that wounded child in all of us. And so until that wounded child is healed, we will make poor choices. But one of the things that has liberated me from feeling guilty or shame or whatever, anger, is that when we know better, we will all do better. Who am I to judge anyone else? And had not forgiven myself for all the poor choices I made. As I said, you read my books. I made a lot of poor choices with my children because I didn't know any better. But I decided to forgive myself. Had I not forgiven myself, I would have been in bondage today, and you and I would not be sitting here across from each other.
Wow.
Liberating.
Yeah, that's one of the ways to heal our wounded child is forgiveness.
Yes.
And you also said, when I asked you about health modalities that you go to, and you spoke about sharing your story and sharing your pain or your failures and validating it or making it aware. Is that what are some ways we can heal our inner resistance? And
well, again, most individuals who choose not to share their story, there's incredible fear of being judged, being rejected. And so we first need to forgive ourselves before we can forgive sort of the perpetrator or the Judases in our life. One of the incredible things I learned when I was working with incest survivors for the York Region Abuse Program, and we had victims from all walks of life. One of the things I learned has been very, very significant for me is that no matter where we hail from, we all want to be respected and accepted for who we are. And that really goes back to this simple golden rule. Treat others as we would like to be treated, without judgment. Because I said, and I cannot repeat this enough, that when we know better, we will all do better. And since I also have a Christian theology background, I always remember in the Bible, when Jesus was being crucified, he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they not know any better." And I thought that's always had an incredible impression on me. It's made a significant impression on my mind. Who am I to judge anyone? I'm not perfect. And so that has been a liberating factor for me, along with many others.
Yeah, for sure. It's almost like, not that we can always describe things in words, but I've learned, if we have too small of a vocabulary, we can't even sometimes express ourselves properly.
True.
And it goes the same with certain knowledge or certain experiences. Without judging, you have to do your best to understand where somebody's at and where they've been in life, especially from what they've shared with you. You might not have heard their whole story. And so, the golden rule of try not to judge and just see a person as you'd want to be seen.
Exactly.
And heard.
I appreciate you bringing that up. We call this a mirror. And so when we're not able just to be the observer, it's an indication if our buttons are being pushed and we're reacting. It's an indication that that emotion that we're feeling in the moment is within us. And this is really, really vital for all of us to remember that no one can make us feel judged. No one can make us feel beautiful unless we feel those things about ourselves. And when we feel that people are judging us or disrespecting us, we need to stand back. This is a bit of Buddhist philosophy, but very, very valuable to embrace, is that emotion is still within us. And at the soul level, that person who's pushing our buttons is actually helping us to identify this is something we need to release. How do we do that? And so anything that does not honor us is not coming from a universal truth. Anything that does not honor us is coming from a belief system. Conditioning, we call it conditioning, parental conditioning, the wounded child. And so again, if we can just remember the higher mind, the lower mind, the higher consciousness is from a higher self. There's a higher self. And the lower mind is our altered ego. We need our ego, but when it is altered, it's an indication that we're living a belief system and not a universal truth.
Do you mind sharing to better understand the ego? Because I think, there's definitely, we feel like that's always a bad thing, like, oh, it's your ego. But and to understand its value, and then how to become more aware of it. Like, I remember simple things like say you have a friend who owns a restaurant, and you say like, oh, you should check out this restaurant, it's a friend of mine. And just like a little, and obviously I'm analyzing it, but depending on how you're saying it, it's little things like that. It's like it's just me wanting to give it a little bit extra attention. Like, I know that person, right? But yeah, maybe you can share so that we can understand the ego a bit better.
The ego.
And I liked how you said the alter ego, because I feel like that's not always paired with it.
No. The ego is essential. It makes us resilient. It's a very masculine trait. And so it's very, very essential, like I said, that we have that developed within us. Or otherwise, we can become doormats sometimes. And we look at life in general, we look at our developing brothers and sisters. So many of these women are doormats. They have no ego. They have been so erroneously conditioned to believe that they're unworthy, and they're just, slaves, shall we say. So that ego is really, really part of the masculine brain, part of the left side of the brain, which is essential. And so, unfortunately, for many reasons, a lot of women do not develop that part of their brain for whatever reason. There are many, many different reasons. And so a lot of women, as we know today, we have 70% of married couples ending up in a divorce because neither one of them is harmonized and balanced. And so so the altered ego is when it's a conditioned personality, a belief system, when we no longer, or we haven't been taught to utilize the golden rule to treat others as we would like to be treated. I mean, that's a very simple rule. And again, we don't have to have credentials. We don't have to go to university. That is a very simple rule, the golden rule, that should be taught in every class. Whether, like I said, whether we have credentials or not, it doesn't matter, because it's very, very simple, and it doesn't matter where one hails from. Treat others as we would like to be treated. Really, really important. If we could teach that to our children, beginning with kindergarten, that would alleviate a lot of bullying in the school system, and so on. We need to teach simple mythology that really helps the child to build self-esteem and self-worth. Because here in North America, like anywhere else, we have been erroneously socialized to believe that worth is about the roles that we play in life. It is about our bank account. It's about the house we live in, the community we live in. No, that is not what makes us worthy. Worthiness is about the fact that we are a child of the universe. And the homeless on the street is not less worthy than the CEO of a company. He's just taking on a different role. And so this is where reincarnation comes in, to really understand that we're all part of the spokes. We're all a spoke of the wheel, and collectively we carry the load. A doctor needs his patients. A lawyer needs a criminal. And so very simple to understand if we put it in that context.
Yeah, that's deep. Let's talk about that, being the whole one with everything thing. And so my friend said, thought it was funny. Just yesterday, maybe I was going for a walk or was in Shavasana after I did yoga at the very end, and you're just lying there, and I was thinking about yeah, too often we get caught up in our heads and our stresses and our day-to-day, and most of the world is just living day-to-day trying to survive, which is understandable in most parts of the world. However, if you have the relaxation to ponder and connect with everything that's happening around you, like so yesterday in the yoga class, I'm lying there and I'm just in this yoga room, but I've done meditation before where they zoom you out and they remind you that you're on this huge planet and everything's happening simultaneously, and you're part of it, like you said. So trying to feel that force of this planet and these stars that are just always moving and growing and trying to work together. Do you want to speak about any of that, of how to...
Well, that is very deep and
big question.
Yeah, it's a big question here. I would like to maybe present a very, very simple vibration theory that the majority of people are vibrating in the third dimension of the altered ego. As we raise our vibration, we'll just know things. How do we know that? Because we're vibrating a higher frequency. And so in the fourth and fifth dimension, where things just come to us. And so we maybe introduce a Christ consciousness or the higher self. And once we have tapped into the higher self, we just know things. We're all intuitive, really and truly. And so again, vibrate in the lower frequency of fear, anger, shame, guilt. That is a very, very altered ego state. And so if we don't forgive ourselves, we will never get to the higher state of vibration, where we will just know things. We will just know that it's just an incredible experience, like what you experienced, that we're not here alone. We're all connected consciously. There's this incredible consciousness. They're all part of this consciousness. What you do, it affects me. And what I do, it affects you. And so if we don't raise our vibration and are vibrating in the higher frequency, it will affect our cities, it will affect our communities. And so just going back to the coming of Jesus way back over 2,000 years ago, his reason for coming was to rebalance the planet from fear to love. Because the darkness, our earth has self-destructed a number of times. And so most of us probably know the story of Noah's Ark, which was about 13,000 years ago, where a planet was submerged under the Atlantic Ocean because it was so dark here on planet Earth. And I don't want to go into this very, very deep, but if humanity does not raise its vibration, this can happen again on our planet. So let's hope that, enough of us will raise our vibration, stay in the high vibration of love and peace, and so that, we can continue rebuilding this planet from fear to love.
Yeah, I love what you said about when it just comes to you, and you've spoken about that, whether you connect with your spirit guides or an idea comes to mind. And yes, my friend said the other day that she'd been with her husband for so long that they don't even need to speak anymore. They're just reading each other's minds. And,
that's true.
and then there was a moment where she read my mind, and I was like, oh, what's happening here? And it's like, yeah, I like that. Because we've all had those moments where something comes to us in a spiritual way or an unknown way, unscientific way, and so it's nice to hear, to remember that we're all here together. We're all grounded on this earth. And
we have what we call the pineal gland right here, and so when this pineal gland is open, it's just incredible information that comes to us, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful adventure. It can be a wonderful adventure, knowing that we're dearly loved. There's no judgment, and whatever we need will slowly come to us. Not what we want, but what we need. It's really a beautiful journey.
Could I ask about following our life's purpose and having boundaries and obstacles appear? obviously we don't want to just jump in the deep end. It's a process. Like you want to speak to any of that about how to slowly take off the masks?
Yes. Yes. What can I say? When we have taken the wrong road the wrong turn on the road, we're going to be redirected until we find our purpose in life. And so it's for us to really be aware of the messages that come to us all the time, not just from people, from our colleagues, from our friends, is to become aware that the universe is speaking to us all the time through different signs, through different, even a sign on a vehicle will give us a message. And so this is when we're tuning in into our pineal gland, we're tuning into the higher consciousness and how we're dearly guided. We're so guided. All we need to do is to ask for a sign, it will come to us. For instance, I was brought to Wasaga Beach, where I live now, by a butterfly. And so because I listened, the message have to resonate in your heart. And so when a message, not in your ego, altered ego, but in your heart, when it feels right, when your whole body just feels very calm and accepting what's coming. Sometimes we need to sleep on it, especially for parents in particular. When children ask for something that could be harmful, maybe, just tell your children, I will sleep on it. I will give you the answer tomorrow. So let's not be impulsive. Let's think about it. Does it feel right the next day? If it doesn't, it was just maybe the ego at play, something that we want. The gifts will be given to us when we're ready.
Right.
Imagine if you were given $1 million.
Yeah.
It might ruin your life.
That's what the guy on Survivor said. He's 20 years old and he got voted out. He made it pretty far, and then he said, I'm 20 years old. It's probably good that I don't win $1 million anyway.
Exactly.
So. Yeah, because that's going to throw a wrench in your plans.
It can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to, if you can, when is an appropriate time to do your own reflection, and whether it be journaling, at the end of your day, if it's a rewind meditation, we aren't given a Truman Show video of our life at the end of the week to say, okay, these were all your mistakes, like these were your growing moments, right? It's all just happening. And so it's good to be still and slow down and be like, okay,
Absolutely.
like, were there any signs this week? How did I feel about this? You have to reflect, and otherwise it'll all come at you too much. And I like what you said about being guided, because that can be helpful in knowing if you're on the right path, or if you look back to previous big decisions and try and think about, were you guided in those choices, and did you feel good about them? And for sure, a lot of times we are impulsive, and often it's easier to just say yes because we want to people please. And I did this really nice exercise in the summertime at this festival where we were all walking around a room with our heads down, and then when the music stopped, we looked up, and whoever we made eye contact with, I was going to say something about musical chairs, but when we looked up, whoever we made eye contact with, we would ask one person, would you like a hug?
Wow.
And the other person, before answering, they would check in with their body for 10 seconds, however long, to actually feel like, do I want a hug? Usually like hugs are for most people, but it's good to do something like that, to check in and to feel more. And again, not about feeling better, but better at feeling. And
for us to remember too that not everybody likes to be hugged.
For sure.
Some people are feelings people, some people are not. So if we have those very logical adults, or for the sort of the parental, wise parent personality, they're not huggable people. They don't want to be hugged. And so we have to always ask permission.
Yeah.
I like that idea of asking permission. I've had...
You might have to add, you're allowed to say no.
You're allowed to say no, exactly. Although...
Because we get pressured, right?
Yes. And this is where we talk about good boundaries. We need to have good boundaries. I remember when I was going through some challenges in my life, I had this dear friend that would just hug me like you wouldn't believe, just put her arms around me, trying to comfort me. That's not what I wanted. It was very invasive. So I'll always remember, that let's ask permission, even before we give it some advice. May I give you some advice? We need to be respectful of people's boundaries, and not everybody's ready to hear the truth sometimes. So being respectful, really, really important on this journey of following, just trying to follow the golden rule, and always asking permission. May I give you a hug?
Yeah, I had to navigate that when to give advice, and for a period of my life I stopped giving advice, but then it was moments where you felt like it was important to speak up, but I think that's beautiful of just asking permission and saying, hey, like, are you interested in how I see this? And it might be of benefit, it might not.
Exactly.
And Joseph and I were going door to door at one point for finding someone to help us with our Kangen machine, and I was really nervous about it, but I just wasn't prepared, and I've never done it before, and he's like, oh, it's fine, it's easy, and so he goes and does it, and I shadow him, and then he was totally open to my feedback. I said, do you mind if I kind of share my perspective? You know way more about door to door. This is my very first day. I just did notice a couple of things that maybe might be worth considering tweaking.
Absolutely.
And he was like, absolutely. Tell me what you saw. I'm not going to be offended. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. And I think that can be really beneficial to ask for opinions and perspectives, and know sometimes it might sting a little bit.
Yes.
But again, back to when it stings, it's like a messenger, and don't shoot the messenger. It's,
right.
Oh, that's interesting. That made me feel, yeah.
Absolutely. So if we can just remember this very simple strategy that whatever doesn't honor us is not coming from a place of truth. Whatever does not honor us, identify the feeling that's coming up for you. If it doesn't honor you, it's coming from a conditioned personality.
Do you want to speak about how we can process those charged negative emotions better? Like, I'm sure different ways. I know we spoke about forgiveness, but like, because you've lived quite the arduous life. If you haven't heard Rita's story, she spoke quite the story on Mo Mondays on YouTube, and in her book. Yeah, you've suffered, I don't even want to use that word. You've been through a lot of family loss, and all kind of very close together, which is even more difficult. So of all of your adversity, I'm sure you've had lots of different resistance come up in you. And what were some ways that helped you? Like, because for me, when I was feeling some resistance recently, I went for a run, and which is like, okay, I got to move my body. And then I go to a yoga class, and then I journal, right? And then you still feel a bit off. And I'm trying to think, okay, do I need to talk to somebody about this? Because my tools aren't working.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. I think if people were to seek out some help, it would really, really help. I left no stone unturned, as you notice in my book. So it's different for everyone. However, grieving is a natural process. So when we have a major loss, it is really, really important that we grieve. We give ourselves time to grieve. Join a group. Hospice always runs groups free of charge. I was one of the facilitators at one time. And not to be too proud to seek help. But it has to be the right kind of help. You want somebody just to listen. And I might have mentioned this in my book, that Sigmund Freud, was considered the grandfather of psychoanalysis. He would turn his back to his patients to allow them to tell their story without interruption, without giving our 2 cents worth, shall we say. If we can just listen, If we can just be trained to listen to somebody who's grieving, that is the best gift we can give that person. And so I went everywhere. I went to psychologists. I think I didn't go too far with them because different reasons. But what really helped me, like I said, it's different for everyone, depending on our inherent personality, depending on how balanced we are. Maybe different things. I became an avid reader. I read and I read and I read. I'm still reading because knowledge is power, awareness is growth, and truth liberates us. And so all I can say that at this ripe old age, I am free.
Beautiful. And fulfilling your life's purpose per pie. Yeah. Absolutely. That was so beautiful. Absolutely. Books have also been a huge influence in my life. And I think that's why I haven't reached out too much to like therapists for certain things, and not saying that I won't do that. I think I've gotten a lot of my answers through books and speaking with different friends. And so, yeah, books are powerful, and
they can be.
And or whether it's a podcast you're listening to, or going to different groups. Yeah, you're right. It's different for everyone. And yeah, I do wish maybe people would seek the possibility of, like like you say, you're not guaranteed that when you talk to somebody that it's going to be right for you and you're going to get all of your answers. It's a process. But what's that quote? Like, every wrong decision is every wrong decision discarded. What was that quote? Basically, every time you make a step forward, and if it's not correct, it's just another one.
Steps backwards.
Yeah, you discard it, and then it helps you get closer to your path. And so, it just gives you perspective. I learned that recently. That was really helpful, of like trying not to see things as right and wrong or good and bad, but more so just bringing perspective to the table, and to be listened to and validated or heard, like better word is just.
I like that validation. It's so important. Validation is paramount. It doesn't matter whether we agree or disagree. When someone is sharing their story, it is really, really essential if we can just say, I hear what you're saying. That's it. Simple validation. However, this is the way I see it. If we could just validate people first before we share our 2 cents worth or our story, but we haven't been taught that. This is really psychology 101. To validate the other person, sharing their story.
Yeah, especially
how important it is.
Especially if it's a tense topic, and when someone shares an idea or how they're feeling, instead of reacting with, "Oh, that's not true. That will never happen." Like you can say that, but wait, you say, "That's really interesting that you feel that way. How did you learn about that? Tell me more."
Exactly.
And then eventually you can say, well, are you interested in my opinion on that? You might not like it, but...
Yes, always ask permission. So we need to, again, when we are healed, when the wounded child is healed, we're able to ask the question, what happens? Like I said, most of us have been traumatized, wounded, if not in this lifetime, in another lifetime. So what happens when the child is not given the attention as a child? When he or she grows up and he or she has the floor, this is where they will do all the talking without listening, without giving that simple feedback or validation, whatever you want to call it.
That's really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of wounded adults walking around.
Do you want to speak more about that? I think that's really important information. So someone who didn't receive attention as a child and then has the floor.
Yes.
And so maybe you have other examples of different scenarios with, I've heard say, when a child gets hurt at the playground, there's 3 or 4 different scenarios where the parent comes forward and says, "Oh, are you okay? Let's get a Band-Aid." The second possibility is the parent comes forward and says, "Oh, like, you stupid," and like yells at them. The third parent doesn't come at all. And then maybe the fourth one comes and says, "Oh, are you okay?" But then later on in the day, they're like, "Oh, you stupid," and it's this.
Yeah.
So do you want to speak about?
Yeah, and I just wanted to really clarify that it is important that we know that we parent the way we were parented, unfortunately, until we know better. And so it's propagated from one generation to the next. And my father would always say that the sins of my forefathers will be propagated to the 7th generation until one of us wakes up, until a family member. I was the 7th child in my family. And so I was born to wake up, to really break this generational disease, shall we say. And so when children feel ostracized, when they feel disrespected, when they feel shunned, when they feel they're not being heard, when they feel unloved, when that child grows up, he or she, first of all, oftentimes they will embark on self-destructive behaviors. And addictions come in many forms, unfortunately, and so this is how an acting out child is a very unhappy child. A very an acting out adult is a very unhappy child. A wounded child is not healed. However, we have 3 categories of sufferers. We have the obvious ones. We have those who suffer in silence. Unfortunately, the largest percentage of sufferers are those who are in denial. And these are the ones that will probably never seek help because they're just too angry. They're filled with rage because they never felt loved. And so it becomes very complex on mental health. And this is why we must not judge. And it is love and compassion that heals a broken heart, not medication. But medication can do temporarily until we get the proper help. Because those emotions do not go away. They are stored in our cellular memory, and they're in our solar plexus. And so sooner or later we have to deal with those emotions. And like I said, maybe I haven't said it here, but the most diseases, including cancer, are a direct result of unresolved emotional issues.
Yeah, you spoke about that with dementia.
Yes. And so we need to address our pain. We need to find a way to speak to someone that can listen. Not somebody who's trying to give us advice. Somebody who really has an open heart, that is willing to listen. Because as we give that person permission to share their sorrow, share their grief, he or she will find his own answers. We don't have the answers for anyone. We all have our own answers within us. And when I was setting up my practice, I always remember asking Master Jesus, well, I don't have a supervisor now. How am I going to make out here? And the greatest message I was given way back, it was that all we need to know about life is already within our heart and soul. When we're harmonized, it's already there. And we could access that wisdom anytime that we need to. Again, it's a long journey.
Yeah, for sure. Like whether it's sitting down in silence and just being, something might come to you, or sitting down and writing and getting your thoughts and feelings out, and it'll just make sense.
Yes.
And or another way, like you said, is when you actually share to somebody who's listening. I did an interview the other day, just very brief, about where I'm at in life, and it was amazing just to speak about it, and it started making more sense for me. And sometimes we can't do that if we're not letting it out and moving it.
Yeah, important.
Yeah.
It is really, really important to find effective ways of sharing our story, whether it be a book, whether it be journaling, whether it be a good friend. And one of the things that I've experienced, I certainly don't want to in any way minimize the medical model because it does have merit, but trying to give someone an anti-anxiety pill for a broken heart is not the answer. Understanding is the answer. Understanding is a key that will set humanity free from the endless cycles of reincarnation.
Do you want to speak about reincarnation at all?
Okay.
We got about 10 minutes,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Of course, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up because it's
Healer of broken hearts.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you that, but it just came out anyway.
And I believe as light bearers, at least part of my mission here in life until I transition is to do my very best to speak about reincarnation. And so the Universal Church, known as the Catholic Church, used to teach reincarnation.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
The 4th century. Then the powers to be removed that from their records, not from their records, but from their dogmas, shall we say, because it was giving the ordinary person too much power, thinking that if I don't do it right this time, I can come back another time. The second coming of Jesus is in our heart. We call this a Christ consciousness. And planet Earth has about 10,000 more years. These are the prophecies. For us, all of us, to get our ascension. The 21st century is about our ascension, where once we have awakened, once we understand who we are, we can get our ascension, meaning that we never have to be born on this planet. And those of us, humanity, that is choosing not to be awakened and will transition, will never be born on this planet again. Planet Earth is a classroom where we come to awake and remember who we are. And once we have awakened and we know and embrace that we are divine beings having a human experience, there will no longer be any need for us to be born on this planet again.
Deep.
Yeah, so this is the 7 golden age of peace, love, and enlightenment that began in 2012. So the Piscean age, under the Christ consciousness, ended in 2012, and the Aquarian age began. The Aquarian age is about healing through higher knowledge, which is our soul, our heart and soul, our spiritual heart. If we can get to that place, there will be no need for us to ever be back on this planet again. We have been doing this for millions of years. And it's time to go home and be at peace.
Yeah, very lovely. I could kind of want to ask you, why are we trying to heal this or integrate Earth so that we can go home, or
Trying to heal planet Earth.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Yeah, planet Earth has been destroyed many times, and this will be the last time. Planet Earth will be rebuilt. We have about 10,000 years here.
Interesting.
To do this. I have all these amazing books here, these prophecies, and they're all channel books given to messengers specifically worldwide now, from the Ascended Masters, Saint Germain, Jesus, of course, Archangel Michael, just so many great Ascended Masters that have been contacting messengers. Now, channeling is very different than intuitive knowing. When a messenger needs to receive a message from the Ascended Masters, the Ascended Master actually takes over the body and uses the vocal cords of that messenger. And so all these, this incredible knowledge is recorded on a tape recorder and then translated into a book form. I have literally dozens and dozens of these transmissions here at the store.
I just read a book called The Magdalene Manuscript. Have you heard of that book?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a similar book to what you're talking about transmissions being turned into a book.
Yes,
And
that's right.
beautiful book. And I was going to say earlier that I don't read a lot of books that are biographical.
Okay.
And I didn't know this one. Half of it was and half of it wasn't. And so it was very powerful. And not that I don't like those books, I just happen not to read it.
It's okay.
Yeah, I have to justify. And it was really powerful. I started reading this woman's story, and like I said, I've read those in the past, and certain things, just certain lines she said that were helping me connect dots in my own life. So that can be very powerful
Yes.
too, with going back to what you said about people sharing our stories and listening. And then the answers will just whether come to the person who writes their story or the person who's listening to it. Yeah.
Well, we sort of need to walk the talk, otherwise we're regurgitating other people's theories.
Right.
That is an authentic story, somebody who has walked the talk. This is what we call empaths. And so the empath is someone who has been brought down to their knees. And being humbled is the first step towards wisdom.
Being humbled is the first step towards wisdom. Yeah.
What a gift. It can be a wonderful gift. So I'm very humbled to have experienced all those losses that truly have given me so much back in return.
Yeah. Yeah, you must have gotten through a lot of challenges in your life, and constantly coming out the other side must really help make you feel fulfilled and at peace as you did your best. And yeah, it reminds me when I was in Europe and I went to Slovenia, and not a lot of tourists go there, and at times people were so shocked that I was visiting parts of that country, and they were so intrigued and asking lots of questions, and you kind of felt like a celebrity. And then towards the end of my trip, I went to London, England. It was one of the biggest cities I'd ever been in, and I could barely stand on the sidewalk with my big backpack and my guitar. And yeah, I felt kind of like a nobody, and which was a really nice experience because it gave me great perspective of, my ego and just being one with everything, and being humble about how grateful I am to have experienced both in the whole trip.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else you want to leave the listeners for, whether, again, small little steps we can take towards taking off our mask, or fulfilling life's purpose, or helping heal, or seeing life as teachers?
Yes, it's always a privilege for me to share my wisdom that has been handed down to me. Is that the last phase of our life, which begins in our 40s, is about being of service for the betterment of humanity. And so for me, it is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be of service, to have been of service for the betterment of humanity. It is not so much about making money, There is not much money in this field of work, but the honor that are given to us, that is given to us, and our ability to be of service, to help others find their truth and be who they were created to be, that we're all divine beings having this human experience. And when we embrace this truth, this universal truth, our life will become a wonderful adventure. My life has become a wonderful adventure, even at my age.
Beautiful, yeah. Such a poet, you lover of writing poems. That could have been on one of your health modalities.
Yes.
Yeah, Rita's great with poems, and she's won awards for her poems.
Oh.
And yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a great way of looking at life, is how are we contributing, or how are we being useful to ourselves, taking care of ourselves, and of course, how are we being of service to our community? And because that gives us purpose in life and keeps moving forward and helping people with their paths. And beautifully said, Rita. Thank you so much for Thank you for creating this bookstore and this space and holding space for others. And you can check out the Light Bearers once a month, a beautiful group that comes together and has philosophical and spiritual conversations. And Joseph says it's like a group of different superheroes coming together. Maybe we'll all wear different costumes one time. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff, for making the time.
Yeah, of course. This bookstore, Be-Still bookstore. Take the step and the bridge will be there. Was that your quote? I love it. All right. All right. Good job making it all the way to the end. Feels good to complete things in life, right? Hopefully you learned something new, and for more information on living your favorite life, head over to yourfavoritelife.com for different personal development services. I do a few different things in life, and one of the things is connecting people to their passions through visualization, planning, and goal setting, and connecting to their community. I also run different programs in the Barrie community for expression, like drop-in improv. And I help people learn about a special water that I've been drinking called Kangen. If you feel like leaving a review, I love to consider your feedback. And if you resonate with this energy, share it with a friend. Remember, the outer world is unpredictable, so do your best to control your inner world and create a nice life. Be kind, be curious, and be creative. Catch you on the flip side.